Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As. So let's go ahead and knock this out. So first question. When cutting, what's an acceptable rate of strength loss for a drug-free intermediate recreational lifter? Would like to lose 6 to 8 pounds a month for the next 6 months to get my BMI in a healthy range, currently 6'3", 240 pounds. Alright, it depends on how much muscle you have. As an intermediate, you've probably made most of the muscle gains you're going to make the rest of your life drug-free. I think 6 to 8 pounds a month is going to be a bit too much. I would lean more in the direction of just losing 1 pound a week. And the reason is you don't necessarily want to lose strength. What you will find is that if for just health purposes, you're wanting to do BMI, you want to see improvement in your blood markers, there's plenty of data out there that shows that if you are losing weight actively, even a pound a week, and you're exercising, you're lifting weights, you're doing cardio, things like that, that your blood work will actually dramatically improve within the first month. So every month that you do this, if you're just losing a pound a week, it'll be fine, because honestly, you've worked hard for the muscle you have. You've worked hard for the strength you have. If you start losing strength, you are losing muscle mass. That's really not ideal for you. And I know a lot of guys are like, well, you lost a lot of strength when you did part of your cut. That wasn't intentional, guys. You guys got to remember, I had an international move. I had to go a month without lifting weights because of the nature of my move, the transition, not having access to a vehicle when I changed countries for a short time, the stress of going through a divorce and an international move. I lost a tremendous amount of strength and I lost quite a bit of muscle. If you guys recall, I went down to like 192 pounds. So I had to regain all of that, and it took months to regain that. I would say it took me just the muscle and strength that I lost at that point. If you guys recall, it probably took me 4 months in the gym to regain that. Just pointing that out, guys. So that's what I lost just from that 1 month. So you don't necessarily want to do that. Don't use my example because that was stress-based, lifestyle-based due to a massive life change. In an ideal world, you don't want to do what I did there. I would recommend not losing more than a pound a day, and you'll get there. Remember, if you're doing this for health purposes, as soon as you start losing weight, your blood work and your health markers will start improving within the month. And as long as you continue to lose body fat, it will be fine. So there's no need for you to go that dramatic. 4 pounds a month, 5 pounds top should be fine. That way you'll be able to keep all of your strength as an intermediate. You'll be able to keep all of your muscle mass. It's a win-win situation. In fact, if you cut slow enough, you might actually be able to make small amounts of progress. Like let's say you cut for the next year and you only lose half a pound and you end up losing 25 pounds or so to get your BMI back in order. You'll actually might be able to, if you're on a good program, you might be able to recomposition a little and actually gain a little bit of strength and muscle while doing it. And your blood work and your health markers will improve the entire time. So there's no need to be in that big of a hurry if you're doing it for health reasons. You don't have a deadline based upon some sort of competitive endeavor or something. There's no need to go that fast with it. All right, next question. Hey JB, what are your thoughts about progression on pull-ups and chin-ups for a novice/intermediate on the bulk? Assuming you gain weight and muscle, particularly in the lower body and size on other muscles that doesn't contribute to these two lifts, would it be considered reliable progressive overload due to increases in body weight, or do you have to put on a chain with plates in order to build amazing lats? Thanks in advance. No, this is a great question. Normally when we talk about progressing on exercises, you're talking about micro-loading. Oftentimes we're only adding 2 pounds here, 5 pounds there. So if you're on a bulk, and let's say you're bulking pretty hard and you're gaining a pound a week, that means every month if you're doing the same number of chin-ups and pull-ups, you've increased 4 pounds on there. That's close to the 5 pound mark. That is actually pretty good micro-loading. Now for a novice that might not be enough, but if you're an intermediate, the fact that you're going up 4 pounds every month and the weight you're using on a bulk is pretty significant. And even if it's less than that, let's say you're doing a really clean bulk, you're gaining 2 pounds a month. That's still micro-loading, and it still gives you the option of adding more reps. So it is a reliable way to micro-load, and obviously you're not going to do dreamer bulks. If you're concerned about really being athletic, you're obviously not going to go do a dreamer bulk of any type here, to where you put on 30 pounds of extra fat just to gain a little bit of muscle and strength, in which case that would be a tremendous overload on your body weight exercises. But there's no need to do that. However, what I will point out is that eventually you will need to start adding plates. Probably as an intermediate, you need to be adding plates anyways. But for a lot of novice lifters, there is some truth to that. They can just add reps while they're gaining body weight, and it will provide more than sufficient overload to grow their lats, rear delts, biceps, everything. So it's actually an effective method. Your bulking itself actually contributes towards the overload on body weight exercises. And just be aware of that. Remember that if the scale is consistently going up, then you are technically adding weights to your pull-ups and chin-ups. And so if the scale is going up and you're able to add reps on top of it, that's a double win. And you can always progress that way. All right, next question. Would the floor press be superior to a pause bench if I'm able to touch my chest the same? Due to the complete dead stop and lack of leg drive, if the range of motion is borderline identical or just as an assistance lift, thanks for the content / likes. I appreciate you giving me those likes, brother. But, okay, if you have that sort of range of motion, your torso and everything is thick enough that you can touch your chest on a floor press, then, again, if you're talking about just for chest hypertrophy, tricep hypertrophy, everything else, I would say that a floor press, a strict floor press, could be just as good as doing a pause bench. Absolutely. Is it going to carry over to your pause bench as much if you're trying to compete in powerlifting? No, but if you just like the floor press more and you can get the same range of motion for general strength, for general development, I see no problem with you substituting the two out. The only issue is that a lot of guys can't touch their chest on the floor press, in which case it becomes an inferior exercise for overall development due to the reduced range of motion. But yeah, with your caveat of if you can touch the chest, absolutely. Floor press can be a direct replacement for the bench press for your overall chest, tricep, shoulder development, all of that. Completely able to replace it if that's what you prefer to do. You enjoy the floor press more, by all means do so. All right, next question. Which of your programs would you recommend for an 18-year-old mid-novice to run on a recomp? If any, what modifications, adjustments should be made in terms of intensity due to the recomp? I'm going to recommend if you're going to do a standard recomp, you need to focus upon efficiency of exercises, not necessarily volume. Especially novices, like if you want to get more volume for your overall conditioning and things and calorie burn, I would much rather you do GPP work and not as much really intense lifting. You only need enough intense lifting to stimulate growth. So I'm going to say that if you wanted to run my novice 5x5, run the cutting version. I've said that in many Q&As before. Run the cutting version of it if you're going to do a recomposition, which means recomp, for those who don't understand, a lot of novice lifters don't know that, it's gaining muscle while losing fat at the same time. Now, oftentimes for a natural lifter, a completely drug-free lifter, that means also staying at pretty much the same body weight. When drugs come into the mix, that's not necessarily true anymore. But for full natty bras, that means pretty much staying at the same body weight while just slowly recompositioning. That's what I'm going to recommend there. Your other option, the linear hypertrophy program I have, can work also. Can absolutely work also. But if you're going to recomp, be aware that the progression on it might be a little too aggressive. So when you reach certain weeks on the linear hypertrophy program to where you can't handle the new workload with the heavier weight, on some of those blocks in the weeks where you're advancing, reduce the weight a couple of percent. Bring the weight down 5 pounds, which is, about 2 kilos for those of you who don't use pounds, you're not in America. Reduce the weight just slightly so that you can actually complete all the reps and sets. Because again, if you're recompositioning, you might not be able to progress quite as fast. And that's okay, because on a recomp, you're gaining muscle a little slower, but you are gaining muscle while losing fat. And that's the whole point. So you could also run the linear hypertrophy program, but just be very aware of the progression. If you start reaching muscle failure, when you go to the new blocks or you increase the volume, it would be wise to reduce the weight slightly if you're not able to handle the new workloads, and just progress as your body will allow you to through the progression of it. All right, next question. Hi Jason, what are some of the benefits and drawbacks of working on a lot of flexibility, such as doing 20 to 30 minutes of intense stretching, working up to the ability to do full splits? Should I be concerned that it could weaken tendons, or would it strengthen them? Could the added hamstring flexibility help with deadlifts? All right, this is a really complex question. I'm going to try to sum this up the best I can in a Q&A. Flexibility in general is good to have. Flexibility is part of overall fitness. You need to remember, fitness includes not just things like body composition or just strength. It includes overall body composition. It includes overall strength. It includes overall conditioning, and we're going to use the real word for conditioning, which is not body composition. It is your endurance and stamina. But it also includes how flexible you are. Now, hypermobility can be a problem. What you need to realize is that, yes, more flexibility is oftentimes a good thing within reason. For sport-specific activities or many real-world activities, too much flexibility can reduce joint stability. So what you need to realize is that stop and realize, how much flexibility do I need to perform the activities I want to do, such as a deadlift or a full squat or play football, or compete in MMA, or do my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You need to look at all the ranges of motion that you need to be ideal. Alright guys, hopefully we didn't lose too much footage there. My microphone started dying out. The batteries died on these Bluetooth mics I use. That tends to happen with these longer videos. So what I was saying is that if you have more mobility than you need to perform the various activities that you want to do, it can, in some cases, slightly increase your chances of injury. And it's not because of ligaments and tendons stretching, it's because you don't get the best joint stability, because through the fullest range of motion where you want some of the strength to be on the extreme end of your mobility, you need all of those ligaments and things to be a little bit on the tight side so that you get better stability in the joint, so that there's less chances of injuring the joints in some of those situations. It's not always the case. It doesn't mean it's going to have a higher chance of injury in every case, but in many cases it will. And that's really something that for your sport-specific needs you might want to research. I think the amount of flexibility training you're doing there, unless it is your actual real fitness goal, not for anything that you're doing as carryover, such as deadlifting or some sort of sport or something. If your goal is purely flexibility for the sake of having it, just like many of us, there's no health benefits being able to deadlift 600 pounds if you can already deadlift 400 pounds. We do it because we want that performance element for our own ego, our own satisfaction, our own goal setting. So if you want to do it for your own personal goal setting, then by all means do so, but don't do it just arbitrarily hoping it will carry over to something when in reality it might slightly increase your chance of injury through joint stability for some real world activity you want to do that you are doing it to try to improve. So understand the difference there. But again, I see nothing wrong with setting a fitness goal and wanting to get really extreme at it, as long as it's not going to hurt your health in any way. I don't see any problem with doing so. And if that is what you really want to do, and it makes you happy and it makes you feel like you're achieving a goal that you want to reach. So if that's your point of it, then by all means do so. All right, next question. I'm getting knee pain from squatting, not the traditional kind behind the patella, but down the side of the knee on the outside, the LCL. Yeah, it sounds like it. Ligament, that is a ligament. Thoughts. Also, I see you wear vibrams in your videos. They look like the hightops compared to mine. Did you find socks to fit them? Because that would be sweet, as mine are funky from wearing them barefoot. Yeah, I get toe socks for mine. I got tons of them. I probably got 15 pairs of toe socks. You can get them on Amazon or anywhere else. Now, as far as the vibrams go, this is the point we might get to. Due to your own ankle mobility and ankle flexibility, squatting deep, vibrams might not be your best choice. You'll notice that I squat in squat shoes and I deadlift in vibrams. For some people, it can put too much stretch on the actual ligaments through there, up through here, this ligament right down the side, if you're doing a full deep squat in a flat-footed shoe, which is why you need an elevated heel in a squat shoe. You might be one of those people. So if that's you and you're going really deep on the squats, ass to grass squatting, and you're getting that pain down the side of your shin, then it very well could be the fact that you might be squatting in your vibrams or a flat-footed shoe, and you need to consider going ahead and getting squat shoes at that point. There, you don't have to get the expensive Adidas Adipowers I have. There are more economical ones out there that you can get. So it might be time to change shoes if you want to keep squatting that deep without that ligament and connective tissue getting inflamed or stretching too much. All right, next question. Hello, Jason. A friend of mine told me that she has multiple sclerosis, but it's not really progressive at this specific time. Would engaging in resistance training program help her to gain some voluntary strength, balance, and help prevent the disease from progressing? Any thoughts are appreciated. Multiple sclerosis sucks. I've known a couple of people who had it. One of my mom's best friends had it, so I watched it over the years. As far as MS goes, yeah, the weightlifting would be a really good idea. You might not be able to halt the progression of her disease. Let's be realistic here. MS sucks. It's a terrible disease, and it generally involves degeneration of the myelin sheaths around the nerves, and the weightlifting isn't going to reverse that. However, what the weightlifting will do is make her healthier. It will reduce her stress levels. It'll make her feel better, and maybe the reduced stress factors, maybe the reduced stress level, the better quality of life itself might be helpful in keeping the disease in remission. Because again, there's a lot to be said towards your attitude and the way that you feel in your brain chemistry when it comes to fighting various diseases. Attitude, oftentimes, many doctors have noted over the years, doctors I've known have noted that people's attitude helps tremendously, and that weightlifting could help with that positive attitude. The upside is that if she builds more muscle mass, more strength, more bone density, anytime her illness does relapse and it does progress, it will take her body longer to degenerate. She will have a higher quality of life with less bone mineral loss, less muscle atrophy, things like that when the disease gets really bad here and there, if she has taken the time to build herself up beforehand. So it will lessen the blow and hopefully allow her to get herself back into better shape faster if the issue does degenerate and then go back into remission again. It will be better for her in the long term. So yes, I think it's a worthwhile investment, but note it's not a cure and it may not help actually stop the disease from relapsing sometimes. It's just unavoidable. MS is just a really shitty disease. And I feel bad for your friend because I have watched a close family friend go through it. It's an awful disease, but, you know, she's just got to keep her chin up and keep fighting the good fight, and weightlifting would be a very good start. All right, next question. I've had a few friends tell me that they are mentally afraid to bulk. They're scared to get fat, leading them to always undereat and never make progress. How do you fix this? They have a body image disorder. They have an eating disorder. It's the male version of anorexia. We see more and more of it now. The only thing you can do to combat this is to go see a therapist. They've also got a question. It's fine. If they don't really want to bulk or get bigger and are not willing to eat enough to do so, that's not the end of the world. Not everyone has to walk around being jacked. Not everyone needs 17, 18-inch arms. Not everyone needs a 600-pound deadlift. It's not necessary for people who work out a lot and enjoy training to reach those goals. However, if they actually want to bulk and they're trying to make gains in the gym, but they're scared of gaining fat due to their other hang-up, then their eating disorder and their body image disorder is causing them distress. It's preventing them from reaching a goal that they actually do want to reach. And if that's the case, they need to see a therapist about it. That is a mental health issue. It's a mental disease, and it needs to be addressed by a professional. There's not anything that you or I can do to help them unless you are actually a therapist yourself. They need to get psychiatric help for that because their body image disorder and eating disorder at that point is causing them distress and preventing them from doing something that they want to do, in which case they need real help at that point. All right, next question. You've answered similar questions before, but assuming you weren't limited by normal human mechanical levels of satiety, how much fat could you gain in 24 hours after eating, say, 50,000 calories in a day or something crazy? The 50,000 is impossible. There's no way the human GI tract can hold that much. So let's go with something crazy like 20,000, 25,000. That's still pretty crazy. And the difference is it's going to be the same number, so don't worry about us reducing it down. All right, we know from some data over the years the maximum absorbable capacity of the human GI tract is about 18,000 calories from a single day of feeding. So anything that you consume beyond about 18,000 calories, you're going to defecate out undigested and undissolved. It'll be digested possibly, but it's not going to be absorbed. So you're just going to be pooping out basically food that you don't absorb. So your upper threshold is about 18,000 calories. Now, how much fat you gain is going to be largely dependent upon the composition of that food. And what I mean is a single, and what you've eaten in the previous days. If you've been in a fasted state, or you have undereaten, or you've even hit maintenance calories, carbohydrates consumed in a 24-hour period do not store as body fat. So someone who hasn't been gaining weight, they're not bulking, particularly if they've been undereating slightly. Let's say you've been dieting for 2 weeks at a small caloric deficit and you were to overeat 10,000 extra calories of carbohydrates in a day, none of those carbohydrates are going to store as fat. However, what is going to happen is that the thermic effect of them is going to elevate. Your body is going to go into purely glucose burning mode. It's going to stop burning fat completely as a fuel source, almost completely, by overeating massive amounts of carbohydrates, and it's going to store all the fat you eat. So if they're eating a fairly high carb load or even high sugar load to do this, they're going to gain weight in proportion to the amount of surplus fat that they eat. So if they ended up eating 2,000 calories of extra fat while eating, 12,000 calories of extra carbohydrates, they're going to gain about 2,000 calories of body fat, which is going to be just over half a pound. The other thing is that, though, there is an efficiency issue. So even if they eat a large amount of extra fat, let's say they were to burn through about 3,000 calories, what's going to end up happening, your body's going to ramp up its calorie burning effect. It's going to ramp up glucose disposal. It's going to dump extra glucose and things into muscle cell mitochondria. It's going to burn it off as body heat. Your metabolism is going to rev up when you overeat like that for the first few hours. Your body's going to try to burn what you're putting into it for most of that day. And so your metabolism is going to go up. So let's say your metabolism might actually go up to about 4,000 calories for that day, leaving a surplus of about maybe 14,000 to the 18,000 you could consume and absorb. And in best case, that might equal about 4 pounds of body fat gain, but the reality is there is a finite limit about how much of that your body will push through its arteries and everything without just, again, expelling it in some way, excreting it. So it's probably going to be upward of, in theory, there's no upward limit to how much fat you can gain, but there is a practical limit of just transporting it through the body. I'm going to say probably at most, the most fat they could gain from this is maybe about 2 pounds in a single day, assuming that 18,000 calories they ate is at least 50% fat. If it's not, then they're going to possibly gain less than that. Again, they're not going to store anything but the dietary fat they consume as body fat at that point. So they're going to have to eat 7,000 or 8,000 or more calories of it being actually fat for them to gain, a couple of pounds of fat. So it's kind of a complicated question. It's interesting to hypothesize. I'm not sure what the practical limits of this are because most people aren't going to try to maximize how much fat they can gain in a 24-hour period. I don't know. It would be interesting for us to study it from a practical perspective, but with us having an obesity epidemic, I'm not sure how interesting or useful it would actually be outside of just finding out just to know. All right, next question. As a therapist, and I'm assuming from this a physical therapist, I've come across a lot of strength athletes with issues activating their abs. From what I can tell, it has to do with the fact that these guys have all used belts for their heavy squats and deadlifts for some time. Typically, lumbar size and strength is incredible, but ask them to do crunches even with body weight and they struggle. Is the compensation with the belt acceptable? Or should these weightlifters and powerlifters focus on ab strength and modifying their squat and deadlift technique? Well, they don't need to modify their technique because if they compete with a belt, they're always going to wear the belt. For purposes of their sports, they can keep doing that. However, from a functional perspective, again, you've noted what I've tried to tell people over the years as a physical therapist who noticed this. Guys who have tremendous strength on the squat, deadlift, other exercises who wear a belt all the time, they don't have abdominal strength without a belt on. Their abdominals are not as strong as you would expect them to be, and it's because you have the specificity of training issue going on. They've trained their abdominals. Their abdominals can develop and everything doing this, but by training them to push against the belt. When they do not have the belt to push against, their abdominals are kind of out of their element. They don't have the motor unit learning. They don't have the nervous system patterns in place to perform movements and have the strength that they need without the belt to press against, even though they might have the overall development. So they're going to have stronger abs than someone who doesn't train at all. Absolutely, even without the belt on. But when you put them in any performance environment where they need their core to perform without the belt, it is not going to be able to perform as well. So their overall athleticism is going to be reduced. And that's one reason I tell guys, if you want athleticism and you want a powerful, strong core, strong abs, you need to be training beltless. Most of the time, if not all of the time. If you want to be strong with a belt on, you could do the combination of the two, but you're obviously going to need to train with a belt quite a bit in order to get really good at wearing the belt in competition. So it comes down to the matter of, do you compete with a belt or not in something? And if you don't compete with a belt on in a competition in some way and you just want to be strong and athletic, I'm going to recommend you take the belt off completely and don't bother with one. So again, comes down to really what goals you're trying to achieve. Like with everything else, there is no right or wrong answer here. The right or wrong answer with this training comes down to, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? What's important to you? It's not a right or wrong answer. There's only a right or wrong answer specific to all of your goals, not just one of your goals, but the entirety of your physical goals are what's relevant in determining what you need to do here. All right, next question, and next one's a personal question, and this is the last question of the week. Jason, now that you've been back in the States a while and settled down a bit, when you consider opening your own training facility? This is stuff I've kind of made clear in the past. Again, training is not my only passion in life. I plan on opening a facility eventually. I'm going to keep some of that to myself, but it's not going to be related to fitness. It's going to be related more to my firearm-related stuff. It is not going to be fitness related. As I've said before, guys, I love fitness. I love lifting. I have no intentions of running any sort of business or even internet endeavor related to the fitness industry or training and weightlifting in general outside of what I do on YouTube, unless it is something that is incorporated as part of an overall tactical course that will translate directly into people's survival skills and shit hit the fan scenarios, home invasions, a revolution and economic collapse, things like that. I have no interest in training people on that directly at a facility or business I own outside of that other type of environment. So for me, the only thing fitness related I ever plan on doing in the future as far as a business is going to be what you see here, the YouTube channel. Any other offline business that I do is always going to be related to firearms or tactics in some way. And there's a pretty high probability that that's just going to be the case. I don't want to open my own gym or my own weightlifting facility. I just have no interest in it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.